Hello and welcome to this episode of Political Capital, your intersection of money and politics. I'm Karabole Tata, coming to you from Africa's richest square mile in the heart of Sandton City. On today's episode, we look back at the biggest corporate scandal in South Africa's history. My colleague Abu Mtila speaks to Steinhoff shareholders as well as a whistleblower who will detail how we got here and their expectations ahead of the AGM on Friday. Plus, the Black Energy Professionals Association has recently launched, and I sat down with the Minister of Energy who tells me where he wants the benefit of the signing of the 27 IPP agreements to go to. And finally, AfriForum has its heart set out on Julius Malema, but the EFF will not go down without a fight. We speak to AfriForum as well as EFF chairman, who is Dlamini-Zuma. But first, let's start with your newspapers.
A bit of a caustic headline to open up this week. Zimbabwe marks Independence Day. From Mugabe too, in the Daily News, to celebrate 38 years of an independent Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is celebrating Independence Day for the first time without Robert Mugabe as leader since 1980, and some say it feels like a second emancipation. For others, not quite. The Southern African nation still faces persistent economic problems, including cash shortages and high unemployment. Major public hospitals have been shut down after the government fired more than 16,000 nurses for striking against low salaries and poor working conditions. Another story been following on Political Capital: Brian Molefe must face justice for fraud. In The Citizen, there will be few people feeling any sympathy for disgraced former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe, who has just lost his appeal against a High Court ruling that his 11 million rand pension payout was illegal. And there will be many hoping the matter does not end there. There is a real prospect that Molefe could be successfully prosecuted on criminal charges, given that the court found there was at least prima facie evidence that Molefe and Eskom had deliberately concocted a pension arrangement to pay him out money to which he was not entitled. A strange one here, from a bit further north in Nigeria. Thugs invade Nigerian Senate plenary, snatch mace. That's in the Nigerian Eye. Thugs suspected to be loyal to the suspended senator representing Delta Central Senatorial District, Ovi Omo Agege, have invaded the Red Chambers and forcefully taken away the mace. The operation took the sergeant-in-arms by surprise, who tried to reclaim the mace without success. It could be recalled that Omo Agege was suspended last week following his role in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill seeking to reorder the election sequence. Omo Agege was suspended last week following his role in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill seeking to reorder the election sequence. Now, the snatched mace is the symbol of authority, and the Senate consequently can no longer legitimately hold plenary. Let's hope they get it back. And lastly, on the Steinhoff story, which is going to be a big day tomorrow for the company, revealed Steinhoff's foray into the ultra-luxurious Cape Town residential market. Steinhoff bought a high-end luxury apartment block jointly owned by Marcus Uester and Investec director Bernard Cantor late last year. Prices for each of the 5 units available for sale, only the 4th floor has been sold, start at 35 million rand for the apartment on the 1st floor and work their way up. So another little fact about Steinhoff that's going to be big news this Friday.
This man has every reason to be worried about Friday's Steinhoff meeting. In short, the life savings of thousands of people he represents are riding on it. Dennis George is the General Secretary of the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA. He represents over 500,000 members. Many of them have pensions tied up in Steinhoff. He'll be watching the live stream from Amsterdam tomorrow from Cape Town with interest mixed with trepidation.
The reason why we FEDUSA want to attend this particular session is because the Government Employee Pension Fund is one of the second largest pension funds that invested about 12.5 billion into the shares of Steinhoff. And what is very critical for us is that we want to make sure that the new board that has been proposed are being replaced by people with high caliber, and we feel that the current board that was there for a long time are not going to be in a position to turn the company around. And that's the reason, if they were not able at that time to uncover the fraudulent and corrupt transactions that led to the situation, they will also not in the future be in the situation to deal with the kind of problems that we're having at Steinhoff today.
Earlier this year, Fedusa met with the Public Investment Corporation, the PIC, who managed the funds of the Government Employees Pension Fund and put them into Steinhoff. He wanted answers.
I mean, the PIC is the asset management company of the Government Employee Pension Fund. And through the Government Employee Pension Fund, Fedusa affiliates, are major contributors. And as you know, public servant workers have the biggest pension fund in Africa. And when investments like that are made, it's made on the basis of trust. It's made on the basis that the management of the companies will act in good faith. They will comply with the fiduciary responsibility. They will demonstrate responsible and responsive leadership. But most important is the issue of ethical leadership. Because if you deal with people that is ethical, then things like that, what happened at Steinhoff, will not happen. But because these people have done things according to the accounting system incorrectly, now we're finding that the share value of that particular company have dropped from 45 Rand to more than 95%. So it is really, really a big concern. And what we want to see happen is that this company is going to turn around so that people that put their money into this company are going to get a return on the investment.
Fedusa has also asked for Steinhoff's financial records dating back 15 years.
Look, I mean, we've looked at the financial statements, and what we have, came to understand from the financial statements was the fact that when these mergers and acquisitions start, and that is what raised alarm bells to us, a company that Steinhoff would, for instance, acquire would be performing very weakly, and the minute after Steinhoff have acquired them without much to do, then the company sort of almost turned around into a miracle company that boosts income and so forth. And after inquiries was made in terms of the taxation that was paid, is that when the auditors refused to sign off on the books of Steinhoff. And that also caused the CEO to resign with immediate effect. And since that particular incident, we've seen the biggest corrupt case in the history of South Africa occurred and played itself off in front of our faces.
Benguela Globe Fund managers Zwelakhe Mnguni was one of the first to pick up irregularities at Steinhoff. He warned it of what was to come.
We kind of had a sense that things were not well at Steinhoff. And what it took is just analyzing the company in a bit more detail, that they're taking cash, investing it, they're not generating any returns on that cash. That was the first thing. The second thing is this whole aggressive growth at any cost. We felt that creates generally a risk.
Nguni has since laid criminal charges against Steinhoff's former CEO, millionaire Marcus Joost. Should the board also be held criminally liable?
I think it's difficult to basically put charges at this stage. I think as evidence emerges, I think there be evidence that supports that they knowingly withheld information. I think that would be criminal and they should be prosecuted. So we would certainly take whatever action, even if we don't own shares in the Steinhoff, we would certainly take action against the board members to try and hold them liable. I mean, we were quite disappointed that recently a resolution that sought to free them from liability or culpability was passed with 98%. And obviously, even if we were shareholders, we would have never been able to swing that around. But it's just a travesty for the industry that we are missing out on an opportunity to hold these board members accountable. And now we give them a easy exit. So yeah, I mean, we quite uncomfortable with some of the issues.
Steinhoff will be holding its annual general meeting this coming Friday in Amsterdam. These are some of the resolutions it wants the shareholders to vote for. Steinhoff AGM resolutions. Discharge of liabilities of the members of the management and supervisory board. Appointment of J. Naidu and reappointment of C. Idwan, B. E. Steinhoff and Christovisi as members of the Supervisory Board. Remuneration for the Supervisory Board for the financial year 2017 of €755,000, likely to be controversial. Appoint external auditor Deloitte, who were there throughout Steinhoff's troubles. Reappoint some members of the existing board of directors. These aren't sitting well with the whistleblowers at Benguela.
If they were to be paid for this extra work, I would definitely say that they need to return the fees that they earned in the prior years, because clearly they didn't do their job. So they can claim what they claim now, but I mean, how about them returning money back to shareholders because they failed to deliver on their key mandate of providing oversight over the executive team? So certainly that is something that should be considered by shareholders. And I think the other element is the reappointment of the existing, some of the existing board members. And I think, I mean, from our perspective, we wouldn't reappoint any of those people because they basically were the people who presided over this disaster that is Steinhoff today.
And maybe to add to that, I mean, the other resolution was to retain the auditors, Deloitte. And again, that's the same auditors who oversaw the whole financials that are now discredited. And the board is supporting that. So, you know, one questions the wisdom of that.
Mm.
Ahead of the AGM in Amsterdam on Friday, the major concern for many is the lack of accountability.
The people that are supposed to lay criminal charges is the board of directors. Because remember, the board of directors have a fiduciary duty towards the shareholders. Now, when they saw what happened, right, they also went to a portfolio committee in Parliament to say, look, you know, this is what they are going to do. But unfortunately, we are not seeing any arrests at the moment. And I'm also very concerned, not only just for Steinhoff, but for the mere fact that these people that make themselves guilty of white-collar crimes, you know, they are being treated in a different way than somebody else that is being caught for shoplifting or for something like that. And those people that steals very little, they get, like, you know, thrown the book at them. But these people that are responsible for billions and billions of rands, they get sort of wrapped over the fingers and over the hands, and then they also get given an opportunity to pay a fine.
This whole 98% approval of freeing the board from culpability is actually scary. That people who are supposed to defend their ultimate investors basically sign off that no, don't hold them accountable. So we hope that they can demonstrate a different tone and mindset that this is not acceptable. If these were politicians, they'd be skewered. But why are we letting these guys walk scot-free?
For now, Union leader Dennis George wants assurance that his members' life savings are safe. There's no doubt that the Steinhoff saga has shaken the huge financial services industry of South Africa. It certainly dealt a big blow to confidence, with some commentators saying it could be the next Enron of Africa. That is in reference to the collapsed American company that dragged down many others in its downfall. Aviwa Mtila for CNBC Africa, Johannesburg.
After the break, we shed light on the struggles of power in South Africa with Minister Jeff Radebe. Plus, we find out why Gerrie has its heart set out on the prosecution of Julius Malema. Welcome back to Political Capital, the intersection of money and politics. I'm Gerrie, still with you from Africa's richest square mile. Now, the issue of power struggles in South Africa is not new, especially from a generation point of view, but what has raised its head in recent weeks has been the beneficiation of black professionals in that sector. I was at the launch of the Black Energy Professionals Association, where I met up with Minister Gerrie to discuss beneficiation in the sector.
Well, I think the struggle goes in phases. As you recall, in 1994, that was a signal of political emancipation of the people of South Africa, and it has taken some time for us as a nation to zero in on the issues of the economy. So I think they feel that they have not been adequately addressed in terms of the economy. As you can see, the structure of the economy still reflects the demographics of our apartheid past. So now it is the time to ensure that we accelerate the pace of socio-economic transformation of the economy, so that the economy, its structure, its ownership and patterns and systems must reflect also the previously disadvantaged South Africans. So when we talk about inclusive growth, we need to ensure that inclusive growth is not for some, but must encompass also those previously disadvantaged people. So that's why I understand why they formed this organization, to ensure that we can be able to empower them in terms of the economy.
Minister, we have to get rid of the notion of investors when they come here that they're looking for a black investor, a black professional to be a BEE partner. When do we become full partners in any sector of the economy, and particularly in the energy space, which is worth billions and has not quite been opened up?
Well, there's nothing that stops anybody, including a black person, from in his or her own right to participate directly into this economy. The way I understand the issue is that the issue of access to capital, to financing, to funding is one of the issues that these people are talking about. That is why also as a government, we need also to use our own development finance institutions, including commercial banks, to understand that black people who were denied capital in the apartheid past must be given those opportunities.
Minister, what you're endeavoring to do with independent power producers and energy players really is to transform a sector which is facing a bit of resistance from unions, as we have seen them stalling the signing of the IPPs before. Do you have confidence that you have them with you on this journey, and have you allayed some of their fears which have led them to approach the courts in the first place?
Well, as understanding, there's one union that has made this application for an interdict, which is NUMSA. As we all know, 2 weeks ago, the judge of the High Court rejected this interdict. That's why we proceeded to sign these IPP programs on renewables. I believe that with dialogue, with more conversation with the unions, with the people of South Africa, they will understand that the renewable program, in fact, is not in opposition to any other sector of the energy economy in South Africa, but it's to enhance so that our people can have access to clean energy in our country. That is why this program of 56 billion rand that we signed will be able to have people in rural areas of South Africa having access to renewable but clean energy as we speak.
I think most people want to know that the rural folk that are there will also be able to benefit from such projects, and on a long-term basis, and potentially long-term jobs. Are those jobs in sight, or are these construction jobs when we're saying 67,000 jobs?
Well, the local people are benefiting as we speak in all these 27 independent power producer programs that we signed. Local participation is one of the key into them. Even community trusts have been created, even the benefits, financial benefits to the communities, even at the construction stage. We want to see them participating even at an operational level as we go forward. So this job, some of them will be temporary, but others will be on a permanent basis, because renewable energy in South Africa is here to stay. The whole world is moving towards renewable energy. There's going to be a BRICS summit later in this year led by our President Ramaphosa, and the issue of the energy is one of the top agenda items.
Gerrie, the man best known for the successful prosecution of Oscar Pistorius, is now head of the private prosecution unit of AfriForum, and he has a big bullseye around Julius Malema for what he says is fraud and tender irregularities in the Limpopo government back when Julius Malema was the ANC Youth League president. We speak to him as well as Dalimpofu to find out the balance within the allegations.
The private prosecution against economic freedom fighters leader Julius Malema will centre on fraud and tender corruption. The allegations surround a company in Limpopo called On Point Engineering. Now, it was awarded a tender by the Limpopo Roads and Transport Department valued at 52 million rand. It is alleged that Malema's Ratanang Family Trust was an indirect shareholder in On Point Engineering. He was accused by the state of personally benefiting from the tender to On Point, using the money to allegedly buy a Mercedes-Benz and a farm. Malema denies this, claiming the case is merely a political attack against him.
It's really, the question is asked because of a misunderstanding of the concept of private prosecutions. Private prosecutions is not a parallel prosecution stream. We cannot decide to elect certain matters and prosecute certain matters. We can only deal with those matters where the National Prosecuting Authority decided not to prosecute. And if we look at the matters and we think there's merit in the matter, then only can we get involved, and then only will we have the authority to apply for a nolli prosecute certificate to prosecute the matters. So the question of now is clearly on the fact that the National Prosecuting Authority has been delaying this since August 2015. Since August 2015, and when we wrote them a letter in March, we were surprised when they indicated that they need until August this year to make a decision to prosecute or not in a matter that was court ready, where the state had an indictment, where the state said they were ready to proceed. So it's interesting to us that they would now make a decision to prosecute or not. That decision was made in 2015.
What I can assure you is that as the NPA, we do not issue a non-prosecution certificate willy-nilly. A person who applies for the non-prosecution certificate must satisfy the jurisdictional requirements as outlined in Section 7 of the Criminal Procedure Act. In this case, AfriForum wrote to the NPA inquiring about the status of the matter. We responded and advised them that a prosecutor has been assigned to consider the matter. A decision will be made on or before the end of August this year. They decide to call a press briefing. We deem that conduct as engaging with us in bad faith and disingenuous, in fact.
No, of course they can have it if it made any sense, but it's a nonsensical call because both from a legal point of view and a logical point of view, it doesn't make any sense here. It's just a political stunt that they're pulling, and we can understand their pain. I think they're more feeling the pain because of our call for land expropriation without compensation. But that call is genuine and it is going to go, so they must just get over it and forget about publicity stunts like this. Legally, they have no leg to stand on. You know, a private prosecution is not something you just wake up and call a press conference to do. Okay. It's something, firstly, they need to have grounds. In terms of Section 7 of the Criminal Procedure Act, only certain categories of people can have a private prosecution. If you are a private individual, you would have to show that you yourself are a victim of a particular crime, and that you have what in law is called substantial and peculiar interest in the subject. Yeah. Or you would have to show that you are acting on behalf of somebody who has lost their mind, which might be the case in this instance. But also, more than that, they have to show what in law we call locus standi, the standing, yeah. Okay. And that standing, among other things, derives from there's a particular certificate which must be issued by the National Prosecuting Authority, which is that they are not willing to prosecute despite evidence having been provided by the person who wants to do the private prosecution. So there's a whole legal minefield which they're going to have to walk through, which I don't even think they have the intellectual capacity to deal with. Yeah. But the law must take its course. I mean, you mentioned justice. That's the whole point. We don't live in the jungle. We live in a constitutional democracy. So whatever you're going to do, I can't just wake up and say, Karabo is guilty of shoplifting and therefore I'm going to prosecute him privately. It doesn't work like that. There are rules. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. There are rules, there are procedures. You must go through all those things. So it's a non-starter. I mean, but for what it's worth, our response is bring it on. We will give them free lessons in law and free lessons in politics.
Well, thank you very much for being with us on this episode of Political Capital. Join us again next Tuesday as we continue the debate on South Africa's political economy. From myself, good evening.